yeah. Hello, hello, hello. Hi, guys. How's it going?
Hello.
Hello, hello. she's a, she's always gonna say hello too.
Mhm.
Hi, Ann. How's it going?
Hi. Okay.
I just saw on Facebook you're all ready to go.
I'm ready to roll.
Awesome, awesome. Hi, Brenda. Hi, Brenda. Haven't you seen you in a while? So yeah, just got a few more people signed up, but some of them can't make it. So we'll see how it goes. If they pop on late, that's fine too. And yeah, we're gonna do something really fun and easy tonight. I'm gonna push you down here to my desk view here so you guys can see all the things that we're gonna need. And my little mistletoe plant. If you do some Googling, you'll see that it doesn't probably grow in a pot like this. This is my little interpretation of it. Technically, they are a very invasive plant and they live off of other plants and kill the other trees. So they're actually not on a very nice tree or plant, vine, however it kind of grows on there. But I thought in Santa's Village, they definitely grow in pots. And then you can cut little cuttings off of it and hang it over your doorway. And, you know, that way when people come by, you have to get a little kiss from them. So, yeah, it was just something fun and easy that I thought. And playing around with my round brush, guys, if you guys took my intro program, you know, I'm mostly pushing you guys all the time with the flat brushes. But I definitely do like the round brush when it comes to some of the daisy strokes when you want a really nice little punch and then popping up. So definitely we want a little bit more of a fat and short, stocky daisy stroke for these mistletoe leaves. And then, of course, if you guys have some daubers, can make your life easy there with that, and just kind of quickly put in the little berries. And it would be the small one if you had the wooden set. And then if you do have the Martha Stewart set, there is one there that's a little bit smaller, but the one size up in that set, about the same size, 1/4 inch. Depending on how big you make this, guys, definitely look nice on a 12 by 16. And I do like these canvas papers, especially for seasonal stuff, because definitely you can get a nice holiday frame and then change it up a little bit. Just pop in your canvas papers and, you know, a lot of them are holiday decor. If you want to put in, change your paintings up in your home or give it away as a gift. Definitely they do look really nice in the frames as well. And then, or a board will fit in a frame. And then, of course, if you don't want to do the frame thing, the wrapped canvases will pop on a nail really easy as well. So, yeah, that's basically it. And then we did do a little bit of a twist on our ribbon. And I gave you guys some sheets. PDF that, in the PDF that you guys saw, the breakdown of the strokes and how I started off on this branch on the tree. Okay, so we'll take it all step by step and get it all built together, and I'll show you how I did it. And then popping up a little bit of silver or any kind of the silver pearls, metallics, will definitely give it a little bit more pop. Sometimes in the pictures you don't really see the sheen in them as much, but definitely in person when you're walking by, different lighting, that little silver pop kind of pops quite nicely in there. And you can always make this smaller, guys. If you wanted to make like a greeting card for people, definitely you can downsize this a little smaller, make it a little smaller plant, make a little smaller pot, and then, you know, put your little saying in there and make cards with this design as well. T-shirts, any of the gift bags that we've been doing. I showed you guys some gift bags on some other classes. So just remember that all of my courses can be incorporated in different ways. So once you take a few different mediums, like the fabric or the glass or the canvases, then definitely you can utilize those ideas on other things, right? So I hope you guys will show me all your different varieties of things that you might put this on. Maybe a cookie jar or something, or whatever you like, right? And make it fun. It is a pretty quick and easy design once you keep. It's very, very repetitive once you get the foundation of it. So the first thing that I wanted to do definitely is usually put our background on, right? And if you guys can see, it's a little bit more marbled and splotchy and just really textured. I wanted it to be lots of movement of color and, you know, just having fun with it. And then definitely we're going to need our scruffy brush, a large one, to do the bottom part. Okay, so very, very minimal brushes that we're going to need today. And then maybe just a small little dotting tool or something, or you can always use your liner brush, the tip of your liner brush, to put your tiny little dots in there. And of course, sign your design at the end. Okay. Does anybody have any questions before we get started on anything? I am going to go through all the colors that I'm going to use. The list is there. Feel free to unmute yourself at any time if you need me to show you something or repeat myself. And then at the end of the event, I'll edit the video and then I'll pop it up on my website so that you guys can have access to the video and the new PDF. Because sometimes I do add the second version, or if I do add another sheet through the video, sometimes I do edit the PDF as well and add extra colors that I might have put in or came up with through the process. Right, so definitely yes, we're going to use our sponge, DeBerry sponges. 90% of the time we always use the smooth side, but today we're actually going to use the scrubby side. Okay, so hopefully you have something like that. Even a kitchen scrub will do, because they have a very similar kind of textured scrubby on that side too. You can always use that if you don't have this particular sponge. And this one is a little bit old, and sometimes I do like them a little bit better when they get a little old, so they get a little bit softer and more flexible, right? They're little, as long as you keep them clean. I do have a little bit of dry paint on here here and there, but generally it is still very flexible. And when they're brand new, sometimes they are a little bit more stiff. So if you do have some older ones, definitely pop out an older one, because I do find that I do get a little softer speckling look with that little extra texture in there. Okay, so we'll start off with our background. And for that I use like a medium gray, or you can also use just a black and then just charcoal it down, keep adding a lot more white into your sponge with the black, and then you'll start getting that textured look. Okay, so pop off some paint on our plate. And some weight. And I do like to use a little bit of medium too sometimes. You guys know what floating medium is? And have you played with the floating medium before? You can always give me a thumbs up if you want. Yeah? Okay. Yeah, so just pop in a little bit of that. And just in case you need it, then you'll have it. But generally, when you dampen your sponge a little bit, with that first initial water, usually that's enough to carry you through a smaller canvas. Concentrate on the rough side of it being damp. Squeegee it out really good. Right, so that it's going to be damp, and then you still have a little bit of a drier side if you need to soften anything or erase anything. Then definitely sometimes it's nicer to have that option to use the other side of the sponge as well. and then I'll grab an old rag and dampen most of the dampness out of it. So when you go and put it on your skin, on your hands, you shouldn't see all those little droplets. It should just be nice and damp, not too wet. That way you can control the dampness, because if there's too much water in your sponge, you're definitely going to get a very translucent look. And this is a little bit more of a heavier kind of sponging look, and it might take a few minutes, longer to dry. So definitely if you have a little blow dryer or a little fan that you can set it in front of, then that'll speed things up to help it dry a little bit faster. So I'm just going to use the medium gray and the white and about an even amount of color of each, right? About half and half. If you do only have black, then definitely you're only going to have a tiny little touch of black, and then you're going to really put a lot of white in there. So then that way you start getting that gray in the middle. Okay, get that different tones in there. But I didn't want it to be too dark. And a lot of times I like to start up on the top. And generally, guys, you're just doing a lot of up and down. There's not really a lot of swirling going on, but you are changing the direction of your sponge every time you're going up and down. So then that way you're plopping down a little bit different colors on top of each other. Okay. And then as soon as you start feeling like you're running out of paint, you definitely want to come over and reload your sponge as needed. Okay, so you really want to concentrate on one little area at a time and move over slowly at a time. And see how you're still getting that little mottled look, and you're not blending. You're no swirls. When you touch down, it's right straight up and down. All you're doing is rocking your hand around from 9 o'clock to 3 o'clock, trying to, dispute a little bit of that mottled look. Okay. Any areas that are maybe a little bit too dark, definitely you can come over and try and concentrate on your white side, tip your sponge over just a little bit, maybe just to soften anything that's a little bit too dark or a little bit too light. You could always pop in that extra color. And you'll get more like a sea sponge kind of style. So maybe you even have sea sponges. That would also work in this kind of look as well. So I don't think I put enough white. Always try to come up with simple, quick backgrounds, right? Because we want to get to the good stuff and have fun with it. If you were doing a card, I wouldn't worry about all this background. I would just get some pretty colored cardstock and then just go ahead and put your design on there. You could always put a little bit of ground coverage at the bottom or something like that. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't worry about covering the whole cardstock with paint. Okay, so load up really good and continue on. Okay, so I'm going to speed up a little bit more now. Hopefully you guys got the idea of it. And you really do want to do it kind of quickly, right? Like, because you're going to get that little bit of a wet on wet softening. Okay, so then that way while you're moving down on your canvas, any areas over here might still be a little bit wet. So I'm using one of these canvas pads, and I want to just put a little bit more of a dark ring around that top area there. Over, make sure I got some good dark. And I'm just going to kind of speckle, holding my top of my pad there back, so that I can get a really good coverage up all the way up the top of my canvas pad here. So you may not have to do this as much, but definitely sometimes it's nice to have that little bit of a speckled of dark border somewhere. And so I'm just kind of softening this whole top area. Really want coverage here. Okay, so again, I'm just gonna splot back on top. And so have fun with it, guys. I hope you're not afraid of the paint. You see how I just kind of distorting things. And you can always go back over it again. If you have any areas that are too smooth, keep getting that fresh paint. So the reason why I'm doing this is just because I want to fix this top. Since I'm right-handed, I can get down that edge a little bit more on the side. And so again, I'm pulling back up on my sponge so I can get that round edge away. Really push it back and try to find that round spot so that you're getting a nice soft blotch, no hard edges. Okay, so I'm just repairing an area. Okay, so don't be afraid to go over it a couple times if you feel like you're not liking the look. Okay, so now I'm happy with my top part. And I'm going to just keep moving down. Now remember, the middle of your canvas, guys, is going to be covered by your design. So you really don't have to worry about the modeling as much here. And if you have any thick blotchy paint that's sticking up, try to make sure that it's a little bit softer in the very middle so that it's not so peaky. And then you can paint on top of it really easy. Okay. And sometimes I'll even actually make it just a little bit darker in that very, very middle. So you can see I hardly have anything left in my paint, in my sponge. And I just want to put that pre-shadow look. Okay, so we're expecting that to be a little bit darker throughout the middle of the mistletoe. And you can have a little bit of texture in there too as well. But I definitely do want to kind of have a little bit smoother look and just a nice darker version of our modeling kind of look. And then we can come back over on each side and just kind of topple on top of it and keep going down. Plop in a bit of dark, plop in a bit of light. You know, there's a couple of different ways of getting this technique done, depending on how freckled you want it to look. Right, some bigger areas or some softer areas, you're going to go a little bit closer to each other so that you don't have all those big spaces. And if you feel like you're not getting a good, definitely put more paint. Like I'm running out of paint here again. And I'm only going to use this medium if I need it. I'd rather definitely put a little bit of paint out at a time. That way I'm not wasting it if I don't need it. Keep working at it slowly until you get it all covered down. About, you know, a good hand at the bottom. We're going to slowly stop. Just freckle a little bit underneath it is fine. So I want to just soften those lines. Push back on that sponge a little bit more. And then we're going to add some more shading at the end to define the bottom where it transitions into the green. So just trying to have a nice freckled look. How's your backgrounds doing? Get freckly? And definitely here you want it to be a little bit, smoother too, right? Like I said, we're going to be putting that pot there. And so you don't want it to be too thick of paint in the area where you're going to be painting. Okay, and then when you're done with the sponge, always put it in the water so then that way it'll stay moist for you until you get to the sink and wash it. Some soap and water and rinse it really good, because if you don't rinse all the soap out, you're going to end up with like bubbled look. The bubbles will come through your paint, and it's actually a cool technique if you really want to try it. But definitely we want it to be rinsed out pretty good most of the time. You don't want to be leaving the soap in your sponge. Right, because it will give it a different look. So then when we're finished that area, we're going to need a little bit of sap and some citrus. Or you can use a little bit of lime, something a little bit brighter. It's up to you. And then we're definitely going to use the citrus in the mistletoe. So sometimes it is fun to put different greens in the background, so it'll complement. But we're definitely going to play off of it, so it should still define and separate for each other once we do with the different strokes on top of the different texture. So we definitely want to predict, hopefully it's already a little bit dry here for you. And we definitely want to predict where the sponging, where the pot's going to go. So then that way we can do some of this scruffy work around it. So we're not doing it under an area where we're going to put a pot. Right, so definitely if you want to just do a freehand kind of pot, I didn't put any filled pattern in there for you guys because I thought this is a basic cup kind of drawing that you're going to do. And if you see the base of mine, and I'm using the same size today, it's only about 3 fingers down at the bottom, and then at the top it's about 4 fingers wide. And I got pretty chubby fingers, guys, so if you want to go by proportions, usually if you're going to go by the width, you're going to have a third and a third and a third. So you can see my pot's just a little bit under a third. Right? When you're doing things, it's easy to the eye. And then I figured because it's under the third, I definitely felt, oh, I got more space. I'm going to add a little sprig on here. Right? So at first I only did this part. You guys remember in the Facebook group I was posting it? Okay, so if you want to grab a pencil at this point, right, and we're going to figure out where our bottom's going to be, right, so just draw a straight line, and we can always curve this a little bit more when we start painting. It's not a big deal. So basically you just want to create a box that's a little bit wider at the one side than it is on the other side. And then where the top of the pot goes, you can definitely put that a little higher or lower along the line. That's not going to make a big difference. Make your pot a little bit bigger. I wouldn't go smaller, but definitely maybe a little bit bigger if you really wanted to. Okay, so just kind of eyeball a little bit of a base shape here. Okay, just to kind of outline where it's going to go. You can't really see my lines on here. And then just give yourself like a frown at the top. And then a happy face underneath it. Okay, so that's basically our pot. And then later we can always put in another line with the paint to give it like a little bit of a rim look to it. So now all we have to worry about is on each side of it, right? So we don't have to spend a lot of time in this area. Okay, so we're going to start with the dark on the top, and the light on the bottom. And I always like to start moving that dark in there first and then pick up a little bit of the dark. So then that way you're not taking over the light area. Okay, and then we can come over to this white and add a little bit of white into the very bottom part of our scruffy. So we almost have like 3 colors of paint on our scruffy brush at a time. But dominantly in the beginning, I like to just use the citrus and the sap. And then later we can come back and freckle a little bit more white in there. And we're going to keep adding more white as we move down as well. So we're going to start up at the top and basically start pouncing up and down randomly, a little bit jaggedy, not so straight across, and cover the whole back area up here. And you can kind of just stop where your proposed little pot's gonna be. Again, sometimes I'll just take my finger and soften it out just so that there's no texture there behind it. And just keep picking up more fresh paint as you need and go straight across all the back first. Okay, so now we don't really need a lot of dark. We're really only going to be tipping up with a little bit of citrus. Right? And then now you're going to lighten up on your touch. Like sometimes we can go really, really heavy, and then sometimes we can really baby feather it, touch it, and freckle it. Okay, so we don't want to disturb that light color, and we don't want to go over it so many times that you're blending it. It's a really textured kind of freckly look, but we're doing it in 2 different kinds of techniques. We're doing it with the sponge and then a little smaller with our scruffy brushes. Okay, so we're going to finish over on the side with that same color blend. Keep adding a little bit more citrus. We want to slowly start getting a little lighter and a little lighter. So I'm just going up and down, just random to cover a good little area. Okay, so now we have at least 2 more rows if you're thinking them as kind of rows. Okay. So hopefully you don't have too much citrus in your brush, and if you do, just wipe some of it out into that rag. And then we're going to come over and pick up some white, and we're going to slowly start to get that look a little bit lighter, and a little bit lighter, and a little bit lighter. So our scruffy brushes are still fairly dirty, and if you notice I'm coming right over on my plate over to the side to try to find a clean spot so that I can get that really nice and bright. And then you're going to come over underneath, a little bit more of a, add a little bit more dark if you want. Soften this area here a little bit. A little bit of citrus, try to not make it too white looking. And let's keep adding more white. Carry over here. You're not really going up over into that old area anymore. You're just moving down into a clean spot so that you can get the brighter white popping up. Okay, if you need more dark, then definitely tip right over onto your edge of your scruffy brush to pop in a little bit more dark if you do need it. And just softly go up all the way around here. But then we can also add a little bit more shading here in this area here as well. Okay, so I'm going to come over and pick up just white, and got a little bit left here on my plate. And then I'll load it up really good with that bottom part of my scruffy and come down. Hold my paper down a little bit there, it's bouncing. And just softly transition to that really light green. So sometimes I will go up and soften a couple areas, just random. blend it a little bit, just so that it's not so harsh to the eye. And if you feel like you need just a little bit more breakage, dark, then you can just freckle the little bit of dark very lightly here and there. And then the same thing, if it's starting to look too dark, you know, you can always go in and pick up a little bit of citrus and just freckle it in a little bit more softer transition. And get a little bit more of that citrus looking into the white. And just play with it until you're comfortable with what it's doing. Okay. And then when you're totally done with your scruffy brush, you can put that in the water too. I just want to try to adjust my corner here a little bit because it's looking like it's got a hill. So hopefully it looks a little bit straight. But still soft, like a little bit freckled on that edge. Just tip right over when I want that dark. And then tip right back if I want just that light. Keep rocking it back and forth depending on what I want it to do. Or directly straight up and down. Alright, so that's all the different ways that you can play around with your scruffy brush. Give it a good wash, and hopefully you guys have those Hart brush cleaners, because I find that these scruffy brushes is sometimes really hard to get in there and clean your brush good. And I find these Hart things, you get soap and water in there and really go in and comb it through slowly so that you're really getting deep in there to get that paint out, because then it does get harder and harder in the center, and then eventually you're not going to get that same kind of look. Your brush bristles will not fan out for you as wide. So you can see that there's always lots of paint stuck right in the very middle there. So make sure that you're washing it, and I'll rinse this out and then repeat, just like our hair, guys. You wash our hair twice sometimes if it's really oily and dirty. Same thing with this. I'll take it and rinse it right out, and then I'll test it to see, and sometimes you'll still see color in your brush. Add more soap and repeat, and make sure that you're really getting these scruffy brushes really good and clean, because raking at the bottom of those basins sometimes I find is just not enough to get all that paint out. Okay, so now that we have our background done, again, you can, you know, we're slowly working in a way, so this should be starting to get fairly dry. And then here where we have a little bit of coverage here already with the gray, it'll be really easy for us to start putting in our pot here if we wanted to as well. So you can use a 16 or 12 if you want. And definitely we're going to add a little bit more black and silver on top. So with the silvers and the metallics, I find that if you just use that by itself, it just doesn't give you a really good coverage. So we have to cheat a little bit sometimes and put that little bit of a base coat look on it. And then you can definitely pop on your shimmers at the end. So we're going to need a little bit more white again. And we're definitely going to need more white for when we start our mistletoe. But if you're planning on having a break or doing this in sections, just put out a little bit of paint as you need it. And then you'll have some really fresh white when we do the mistletoes, because it's really important to have nice fresh white on your brush. And so the very back of the pot, we're really not seeing too much there. We're going to pounce in a little bit of burnt umber and some coffee latte or any of the you know, beigey kind of colors to kind of make it look like there's a little bit of dirt in there. Right, just a lot of times we do moss, but then there's so much green going on. Moss would definitely be too much. So I decided to put in more of a brown color in there. Okay, so we're going to come over and load our brush with two colors. Okay, so then that way we can start highlighting and shadowing and separating the areas of the jar, or I keep saying jar, pot. So we start at the top, and you're just going to follow along. Right, you can put a little bit of an angle on your brush, depending on where you want it to come in and narrow. Where you want it to cover a lot of area, you're going to kind of paint really flat and fat. But over here, where you want it to be narrow, you can come over on a little bit on an angle, and then curl it all the way around. And then point your brush over to the side to narrow that up. Okay. And then often what I do is I just use the bottom of my brush just to kind of guide that dark color all the way around the smile line. Okay, and it's not a big deal. I'm just kind of smoothing out the color a little bit so there's no globby areas. And then I'm going to repeat right along that happy face there with the white. And I'm going to push really hard on my 16. And if you're using a 12, then you might have to go over it a little bit more. But a 3/4 I think would be too big. Okay, so I would just go back and forth until you got the rim covered. And so we want that little bit of a streaky look and movement too. At the end, we can always add a little bit more little areas of randomness, you know, so you're just kind of just going back and forth with your brush. Just give it a little bit more texture and soften it out there a little bit. So your highlights should be only really in the kind of middle here. Right, so it doesn't matter what size brush you have. You're still going to play around with your chisel edge. You're just kind of scraping that little bit of the chisel across the top just to get some movement in there. Okay, keeping a little bit of a dark edge there. Okay. And then what I like to do is take that dark color and draw all around the edge of my pot. And just go back and forth. It's just really covering it in, but trying to focus having that dark stay around the outside. And color in all of the inside, or the outside first. And usually this little rim part sticks out further, right? So we can always extend this little part here so that our pot comes out wider here, and then it comes in narrow at the bottom. A little bit more rounded. Just keep picking up fresh paint. And so once you have all around the outside all done, okay, load up real good. And then I'm going to turn my brush around because I want that dark to come up underneath the rim again. Okay, we're just going to put a little line of dark under there, mostly white in there, right? And then now we can go flip flop just to cover all the center area. Okay, that's how I tackle that. And then as it's still wet, I'm going to just encourage to have that dark come around and fix any of your areas. And again, you should have that little bit of a streaky kind of look movement throughout the middle. So it's great for a good base coat to get it started, and then we're definitely going to add more to it later. Okay. Let this dry. Smooth out this globbiness here a little bit. Put some fresh white. And same thing, like you just kind of just putting the odd little random movements. Okay, some short, some long, and then over to one side more, like not directly on top of each other. Okay, so hopefully it's a little bit the same on both sides. Soften this a little bit more. And if your background's a little bit tacky still, especially where you're doing some heavy sponging, you really want it to be dry so it's safe, guys. Because if you're doing a lot of daisy strokes and you're leaning your arm in this wet area, you're going to be making a mess. I usually have paint right up to my elbows, but definitely it is safer if you have a heavy paint load going on to just give it a few seconds. Usually we take a nice little break here at this point, just because of the paint telling us we need to give it a little bit more time. How you doing? You guys got your backgrounds done? Yeah? Awesome. All right. So first we're going to break down this mistletoe plant. All right, you can put some main trunks of the branches like I showed you in the practice sheet. Okay, so these little guys I put in last after, right? So we're just going to put that one big stem right down the middle, and you try to give yourself a little bit of space at the top. You want at least the same amount of space as you do at the bottom to the top. So picture you're giving yourself a little bit of a stroke there, and put one stem down the very middle. Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 areas here of main branches. So it depends on how much filler areas you want to put. You can definitely break this down to 3 or 4, right? I did put one right at the bottom, right? So there's the 2 big ones off to the side, right at the bottom. And then they just kind of just random, guys. Just, sometimes they can have a little curl to one side and then flip out on the other. And then this next branch, you're going to flip over maybe a little bit more on top of it. You can make this one slightly smaller. Then you can come out a little bit bigger maybe, and then have a smaller one. So they don't have to be totally symmetrical on both sides. Okay, so you're going to play that out as you come down with your chisel strokes. And then once you have these 4, these areas done, then we're going to pop in some smaller ones just at the base of each little section. And then those will be our stems for all of the main leaves. Okay, and then definitely coming down into the sides, we're going to be flipping some upside down, okay, to give them a real nice little curl and spin some different directions around. Okay, so hopefully you guys have been practicing all your daisy strokes in all the different directions. And I'm going to show you again right here on the practice sheet and give you guys a couple of different gradients here to play around with a little extra white tipping on the edge. All right, And then also you can tip a little bit with your silver as well if you wanted to do that as well, right? So we will be doing dominantly the most part of the green with it, and then at the end is when I start to pop in the silver. Okay, so you don't want to be doing that throughout the whole plant. It just makes it way too much pop. But if you have it here and there sparingly, you can kind of see on my paper a little bit more of that little pop of the silver instead of the white. Okay. So I started doing all that work with my, you can do it with 3/4 or 12, 16 if you have it. And come over and multi-load our brush. Make sure that it's a little bit slippery, so if you need a little tiny bit of floating medium, just to make it a little bit more moving, right? Because we're going to be sliding our chisel all the way down. So you can practice on your plate a little bit or on some paper. Plate is nice and slippery like your canvas, right? So just do a couple of those chisel strokes just to make sure your chisel's nice and pointy. And then we can start doing a little bit of that nice fine vine work. Okay. So I did try to make it a little bit more, curly here at the top with two. Right, one a little bit higher, a little bit lower. But you can definitely add all that later, right? But we want to have a little bit of that look here so that when we put this main one in there, right, we put our main stems. Nice and thin. Giving this one a little bit more curly look. Okay, so they're all going to join into each other as much as possible. Right? Once we fill it up, you're not going to really even see much. Right? And then I'm just going to make that a little bit shorter because my strokes are going to come right out there too far. Okay, so not too wide. Once we have the main part of the tree looking, now we want to start adding a little bit more stem work. And these are just shorter guys, right? So like another little V in there. Put another little smaller one underneath. Okay. Keep tipping with that light green. So that's basically what I'm doing, is just putting two. Here I have a little bit more room. I can put 3. Always put one underneath too. And fill in your stem. So you want to have those little breaks in there so you have room to put your leaves, and then you're still going to see some of your base of your, so this should all fold into your stem nicely. So sometimes I'll just kind of slowly go and smooth them in. Really nice light touches. You can always put more of those in there too if you feel like you want more. Alright, but we're going to play with our daisy strokes off of all these little branches now. And then we can also start to propose one now. In the step-outs, I actually did, this was an afterthought, right? So if you want to flip this upside down, you can give yourself a little bit of a branch. Right? So I did put like 2 branches here. Flip your brush around so you have the dark leading. So we have one here and maybe one coming off to the side. And we're going to put in a couple of smaller branches. Leading with the dark at the bottom will make it look a little bit darker. Trying to get a little bit more curl in that branch. Okay, so that'll be there and ready for us to continue on. A little branch after. So I was continuing on when I first started here with the 3/4 brush. So if you don't have a round brush, you can definitely do all these daisy strokes with your flat brush. Maybe you want to downsize a little bit. You can do it with an 8 or a 10 if you really wanted to do it all with your flat brush. But I definitely use the smaller 8 round brush. Okay, so for when we're doing this kind of look here as well, what did I do it? Oh, I remember now what I did. I did do some of this with, like I said, I started off doing it with a flat brush and then I finished it with a round brush. So that way I had some really different looks there. Some of them in the background were smaller chiseled daisy strokes. And so like I said, you can do it either or. But I will show you with both because I do load my round brush just a little bit differently. Okay, so I'm going to move down to a 10. And find another little area to load my brush here. Okay, so about half and half.
Mandy, what size brush did you grab? A 10?
A 10, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Just to start getting some of the skinnier ones in there. And then I changed around to my round brush as well, so it just gave it a lot of different looks of thicknesses. Okay, so then we're going to come over and tip with the white. And we definitely want to add a little bit of brightness into that white. But then we also want to tip as well. So sometimes with the small chisels of daisies, we can get like a couple strokes in, but we lose the white. So what you're going to do is come over and blend on your plate to blend in your brush to get that green in there every time. And then just come over and tip with your white. Do a couple strokes, come over, pick up a little bit of white, and you can do a couple more strokes with your loaded brush. But then when you start to notice that you're running out of dark, you definitely have to come over here, flatten your brush out again, and then flatten your chisel out. Because especially with daisy strokes, you're doing this and this and this and this. Guess what's happening to your brush? It's getting all wonky, right? So we definitely want to come over here and encourage it to be nice and smooth and flat. And I do that at least every 2-3 times. The more anal you are about coming over here and just doing, like you got lots of paint here, right? You don't have to keep adding more paint every time because it's going to get too gloopy, right? So you really want to come, see how that big gloop is there, right? Make sure that you're focusing your gradient so that you're able to pick up a nice smooth load of paint. Right, you guys can see how nice and skinny my chisel is. And then coming over and tipping with a little bit of white. Just that pea white. And when you press, depending on the pressure that you push, you're going to get all those different thicknesses. Right? And then picking up with fresh white every time. Okay, so we're going to start up at the top and work our way down. Put up our base there. And if you feel like your brush is not spreading enough for you, that's when I feel like, oh, maybe I do need just that small amount of floating medium in there. I only put the floating medium in as needed. If I do a stroke and I'm not happy with how much my brush is sticking out, then I'll definitely go and add a little bit more of that floating medium in there so I can get that to spread out a little bit more. Closer so you guys can see. So again, coming up at the top, you're putting just a daisy stroke on each of these branches to get started. So I want this one to curl a little bit more and overlap a little bit. Come over smooth, pick up fresh. I can overlap a little bit over in that one now. Smooth over. I'm not adding more paint, I'm just smoothing. Come over to the side. Right. If you feel like your stems are too long, you can always shorten the look by adding the daisy stroke in a little bit more and covering. Okay. Move it down. And you don't have to do all of these middle ones. Like I said, you can leave the odd one out. And again, moving down. Sometimes it's one of your paints that's thicker than the other. So we have to keep an eye on that. Maybe we only need a little bit of floating medium in the dark color. Let's see a real nice streaky look. This one has a little bit of a curl. We can put a little bit more of a bend in there. Concentrating on all the stems right now. Real nice punch in them. Maybe another little curl to end. Like I got lots of space there, so try to just be whimsical. How you guys doing with your daisy strokes? Need more help? You gotta jump on that course number 4 more. Right, straight through the middle. You're gonna get that nice streak. If you have a little bit of an angle or tip forward, tip back, you know, you're going to have more points on them or a flatter start. And you definitely want to be right straight down and follow through right through the middle as much as possible, especially for those straighter strokes. Sometimes when we are doing a little bit more of a flip on them, then sometimes that highlight area will fall a little bit more up on the one side, right? But generally you still want to see that streak coming through, right through the middle. A little streaky look. A couple little bit on top. These ones definitely are a little bit longer, slender, this brush. Going this way, try to make the next one the other way. And then I was like, no, I need more punch. That's when I decided that I was going to change brushes. Right? And then also the silver. And so the Treasure Gold series is a really nice popular series that a lot of us are using. That's why I used in this one for the leaf part. But I did pop in the white flash for the color on the berries. Okay, so that's the white color shift line. And then the metallic is also quite nice as well, the silver sterling that you could use as well. Any of the silvers and shimmers. And so at this point too, what I did was I was deciding too about this green or brown at the bottom, because I do want some of these leaves to pop on top of the brown a little bit easier as well. So if we want to pop in just a little bit of the burnt umber, don't need a lot, guys, and the maybe a coffee latte or something like a medium brown. And then if you want to use your smaller scruffy brush, that's a good little brush too to get some texture in, to make it look like soil. And then I'm going to add just a little bit of white in there to get a little bit of a mottled look. So the first area I wanted to concentrate a little bit on was getting that dark all around the front of the brim. Right, so you're just jaggeding that up here and there. Again, just covering the bottom, getting that dark in there. And then also, guys, while you're doing this, you're going to make sure you have a clean brush handy that you can just dampen with some water. And then you can clean up the bottom of this line very easily to get a nice smooth look there again. And then now we can move up a little bit at a time to add some lighter areas to make it look like there's soil in there, kind of popping up in between my strokes. And then you add a little bit of white and just freckle some areas here and there slightly. To model it out a little bit. And so we can put a little bit gently on some of those branches to look like it's really growing out of the dirt. And if you don't have enough dark there, then definitely we can add a little bit more shading. I'll show you a trick about adding shading around things a little bit later. And then we can see what pops out and what it might need. Just a quick and easy dirt. Okay, so I'm going to come over and pop out some of my silver. It's definitely a little bit of a thicker paint than the other ones. Gives you a really good coverage. So when we're doing with the round brush technique, if you guys haven't jumped on my courses before, we're doing like a flip-flop kind of look as well with our round brush. We can do that with our liner brush. If you want to make some smaller ones, you can definitely use the same technique with any round brush. Okay. So the difference is that we're going to add a little bit of water into our paint. Pull some of that citrus over. Right? And you're going to add maybe 2 gullops of water. Blend that in. So it's kind of not so peaky anymore. We don't want it too translucent, but we definitely want to have it workable. So we're just prepping that area with some moisture. Hopefully you got a good amount of paint there that you're prepping, so you don't have to do this again. If you do, you do. Right? And then now I'm squeegeeing all that good paint over on my plate. And then I'm going to wipe it out, rinse it out. And I'm going to do the same over here with some clean water. I have 3 different reservoirs of my paint water, right? That's why I like these ones here, because now over here I have some really clean water, even though some dirty white, to try to do the same thing with my white, so I can keep it nice and clean. Not as inky. If you guys have done curlicues before, this is not an inky consistency. It's just a little bit more runny. Okay, again, I'm pushing and twirling my brush so I can put all that paint back on my plate. Clean my brush in the dirty side. Wipe it on a towel. Come over and give it a little rinse in the semi-dirty side. Right? And then you always have clean water over here to add to your paint. So you got your triple dip thing going on. And then if I need a bit more water, I'll come over and just do a quick dip over here. Trying to keep that one little side of my reservoir the cleanest. Okay, again, squeegee out that paint. And I'm just wiping it out on my towel. Give a lot of dark and give it a very quick dip in some water, just enough to say that you're kind of giving a quick rinse, and then dry it quite well on your towel. So then that way when you're loading your brush, hopefully your brush isn't too overly wet, right? Just damp like your sponge was. Again, if you want to play around and practice on paper, So what we're going to do is we're going to flip through our paint with one side of our brush, flip through the other side. We definitely want to have a good amount of paint on our brush. Sometimes I'll go and tip with the white. Right. Or you can go in tip with silver. So when you push down with the dark side up, or you push down with your light side up, you're definitely going to get a different color dimension going on. So dominantly we do want to have a little bit of a brighter, lighter leaf. So we want to try and do our strokes with the light side up. You just punch down on that brown brush, and then you're popping up through the middle of it on your chisel. You're not dragging, right? So a lot of people will tend to, and then again, I want to reload. Sometimes I'll just wipe off the excess color. I don't want that white or silver on there. I'll just lightly wipe it off. Come over, reload my brush. Not too globby. And then if I want to tip with the white or the silver, you're going to get that silver pop through instead. So sometimes I'll do a double dip. I want to get it a little bit lighter, brighter. So you want it, like I said, you're picking up right away, guys. Right? A lot of people will push down and then drag. You're making a long stroke now. Right? You're pushing down and then you're picking up that tip up and drag through just a little bit. Right? So there's a little bit of a difference there in this technique. If you want to add a little bit more light, you're going to tip through, pick up a little tiny bit of white before you pick up your silver. And you want to practice doing some upside down ones. You're just going to lead that brush where it's going. Pop up on your chisel before you start to drag and curl it around. Okay, so it should be a little bit softer transition. Trying to show you guys nice and slow. Okay, and then my brush is pretty good. I've got lots of paint. Sometimes maybe I can do 2 strokes with that. Let's try it again. Maybe I had too much paint. Always try different varieties of paint, guys. Right? So maybe you're a little less globby. And you're like, okay, that's the consistency I'm looking for. A little bit lighter touch. Pick up, and pick up. Okay, so if you have too much of a blob on the tip of your brush, you may not be able to pick up. And this thicker paint here is definitely a little harder. You guys almost scoop it compared to dipping. Okay, so you're going to do a little bit more of a scoop to pick up that little tip of silver. So now we want to kind of fill in all the center areas. Right, giving it a little bit more of a punch. You can pull this a little bit over to the side. Right, add a little bit more of a point. And then definitely if anything is not silver enough, you can always add that silver a little bit extra later. You can always go or just tip a little bit of silver. And maybe you don't like one of these daisy strokes that you did with the flat brush. You want to go over it again. You can definitely go over it again with a little bit more silver on the tip of your brush. Let's make it too gloopy. A lot of times I'll tap it onto the side of my plate if it's too gloopy, and then come over and tip. Push and then pop up. It gives you a really different look compared to the flat brush. Okay, so these skinnier ones just look like maybe they're the ones on the side profile. You're looking at some straight on, but if they're flipping over to the side and in the background, they may look a little bit skinny or slimmer, right? So you like to have some different looks to them. And then I'm gonna go and scoop with that silver. Right, you'll get to know maybe you're pushing too much. You can push a little less. Get a little smaller ones. It's all about pressure determining the size of it. Okay. When you're not pushing as much, you're not using all of your paint either. So you can see I still have lots of paint on my brush. I'll use it. Right? Maybe I have just a little bit more green. And so sometimes I'm just kind of picking up on the tip to reload just gently. And we want to add some different ones too, right? So definitely want to add like a finished flower kind of look. So you want to change the direction wherever it's always going in one way. Maybe you want to layer a few more up a little bit differently. So I've got lots of paint on my brush, guys. It's really a loose kind of technique. Right? And press down on that side. I used most of the paint on that side, so now I can press down on this side and use up that paint on that side. Okay. You can flip around, flip and flop, not too globby. Pick up a bit of silver. Curl in one maybe that way. A little bit of a softer round. Not enough silver, just go over it again with a little bit of silver in the brush. Getting uncontrollable, but just wipe out your brush. Start over. Flip, flop. I'm going to do one that's curling a little bit more, maybe that way. It's the kind of tree that would never look the same twice, right? You're always gonna have a little different variations going on, depending on the space that you have. And so now it's all about trying to curl some of them in different directions. Just to break things up a little bit. Any of them you don't like, you can always go over them again. Right, which I pretty much did a lot of because I just love the way the round brush was looking. Right, but leave some of those skinnier ones up there. Okay, and then like I said, I really want to brighten some edges up. Then I just grabbed that little bit of silver on my tip and just added it to the top of the stroke. Just whisked it right in there. Okay? You don't have to put as much pressure. Just kind of adding that little bit of a whimsical color in there. Right. And it's a little bit translucent, so it'll just wash right over if you just have silver by itself. Wait till it's dry, and then just pop in just that little bit of shimmer by itself. So we can wipe off that silver if you want, and start off here as well. And now we're comfortable with our round brush. If you feel like you like your flat brush better, then definitely use whatever brush that you like. And we're going to push a little less. Push and then pop up. This is a little bit longer one. Definitely I'm going to drag it a little bit more, but I'm still not coming all the way down to the base. I made that one really nice and dark. So now I can curl a lighter one on top. A little bit of a light pickup. This one right over. A little bit of white, a little bit of silver to start layering more. Right, lots of paint on my brush still, guys. I'm choosing just a tip with a little bit of silver. Bring that branch up just a little bit if you want. So we have something to put a ribbon on. Popping a couple more here, another layer. Light. And maybe we'll put this one this way. Doesn't stand out enough, just tip with a little bit of white. What do you think, guys? Should be a pro at all these daisy strokes by the time you're done all these, right? Have fun with them. You know, I'm trying to make them really punchy, right? Coming up on your chisel. And then, you know, there is a little bit of flexibility there depending on how much you want to drag it. But remember that you're bringing it to the stem so that that's your length. Okay, you're not really dragging your stem too much. And that's what helped keep me focused on the shaping of where I wanted to place them all to. Definitely let it dry and see if you want a little bit more pop. We're gonna need just a little bit of licorice or black. And if you want to keep up with me, you don't finish all of your leaves, that's fine to stop if you want, and then keep adding them later. Or keep going and then just add a little bit more shading later with the recording or the final touches. So you're going to pick up a smaller brush, a 12 or your 16 again is fine. So we just want to add a little bit more dimension and shading in areas. Okay, so we can do either whatever you want first. I'm going to pick up a bunch of floating medium on my dry brush to dampen it. And then I'm going to come over and pick up just that little bit of sap on the corner of my brush. Okay, so you're just loading just that tip with lots of clear. And then now we can put a little bit more depth around the outside of our pot. And just a little bit more shading underneath it. On the outsides. And just kind of fade it out, wish-wash it in, so that you maybe have a little bit more streaky looking coming out. It looks like the shadow casts of your plant, right? So you can, we have a lot of busyness going on this side, so definitely we can play a little bit more with our background on this side. Okay, so you went around flat this way, but now you're going to take that wet paint and just go flick it out. So that it's not like a line that you're drawing around your pot. So you want it to look nice and natural. You got to put that shade in close, but then pull out some depth. Just adding, try not to be too stripy, nice and soft. So I'm going to go over it again just to blend and soften it a little tiny bit. And then I also use this little trick too. If any of my leaves are just not standing out enough, because I've got some lighter ones on some light areas, then definitely coming in with that little bit of sap and lots of floating medium, keep adding your floating medium, and then coming up underneath some of your lighter leaves, just very gently. Right? If it's too dark, take the corner of your clean side and just thin it out a little bit more so it's translucent. And you can always add just that little bit of shading to add to your background. Okay. I'm putting it on a little bit heavy to show you guys a bit. Oh, I don't like it, it's too heavy. Now I'm just kind of rinsing it away. You can get a clean brush and just feather it out so that it's really nice and soft, like as if it was a shadow. Right? This is your little extra that makes it just pop a little bit more, especially if you have some areas that look a little wishy-washy compared to your background. Just adding that little extra separation. So sometimes I'll put it in. If I have it too much, then I'll rinse my brush, just soften it, or add more floating medium. Just a gentle. And of course, my fingers works. Right, shouldn't need too much there. But just in these little few areas makes all the difference. And then we're going to clean our brush, and we're going to do the same thing with our gray now. Okay, so you have a little bit of water left in your brush because you rinsed it, so you might not need as much floating medium in the beginning. I'm just trying to find a clean spot so I guys can show you. Make sure you're doing it on the flat part of your plate if you can. Right, again, we're just using this corner little bead of paint to draw with. Right, so I want to define this background here a little bit more. I can add a little bit more shading around the outside of it as well. Okay. Pick up a little bead of paint. Lots of floating medium, guys, because you want to do a big area. I'm going to flip our canvas upside down, and you're just going to do a little wash of softness of that soft gray look all around the edge of your sap green. Sometimes I'll just pick up that gray and just work it into my canvas too, especially if I'm doing a big area. Okay, so that's going to soften a little bit of the transition. The gray. And then where we're going to need to deepen it just a little bit now, we're going to pick up a tiniest little pea of black so that we can make a bit of a charcoal. Right? If it's too black looking, just keep adding a bit more gray to it. You can always add just that little pea of a darker color in your shading as well. Background. And bringing it out a little bit. Recessing that pot. And you can even use this little gray black mixture to come down and add just a little bit more depth into over the green too if you want. And so this really depends on your background colors, guys. If you're feeling like it's really too light or just not standing out enough, then, you know, you can tweak it just a little bit more. As you can see, I'm coming right up underneath my leaves, too, if I feel like I need to just pop them out a little bit more. And I'm kind of coming in sideways to kind of just add that little bit of glaze of a see-through black, just to deepen things in a soft way. And we're going to pick up that charcoal mixture. And now we're going to add just a little bit more underneath the brim, and this is going to help pop out that ledge. Again, bringing it down, flip, flop, bringing some of that shading over. And it should be really translucent because you're following with all that floating medium. So you're laying down that black, right? But you're going over it again with some of that floating medium so that we can make it look really translucent. Just to separate some of those areas with the white, leaving some light areas. And then we're going to add that black to the one side. And the same way we were doing there, we're going to bring over that black off the edge. Press into that wet paint and pull. I'm going to turn my brush upside down so I can add that shading to the bottom. More paint. Just bring in that dark over. And gently. Sometimes I'll pick up a little bit of both colors. Right, so you're gonna multi-float. If you feel like you just need a little bit of fixture, of a soft gray, and put it in that way too as well. And you're gonna add some white. Alright, so you have all three colors on your brush, and whatever was left in your brush, guys, I'm not really adding more of that dark. I just added a little bit of white into that tip, just to kind of add some more streaks of white in the very, very middle. And then sometimes what we'll do is actually pick up a little bit of white and add a shine line. Okay, so I'm just adding that little extra bit on the edge, tipping off a little bit on the excess, and then we're going to put just that little bit on an angle and come and touch down and put a shine line in there. You can, if your pot's really shiny, you know, you can always add those little skip marks. And make sure your canvas is dry. If you don't like them, then you can always erase stuff, guys. Just take a wet old brush, take off what you don't like, wipe it really good with a towel or your fingers, and just kind of blot it and dry it. Right? Maybe you put up too much paint on your brush. Okay? So really, we just want a little translucent shine. Right, just a little skid mark maybe. This is not glass, so I'm trying to really make sure that it's muted. If you're going to put that little area on there. A little bit more translucent. If you feel like you have to fix the top of your line, you can always do the same trick again with a little bit of white. Again, lots of clean floating medium. Just that little pea of white, and then just come across the top of your bridge here to brighten up anything or clean it up if you got it a bit dirty. So these are kind of things that I would usually do at the end. But I did want to make sure that this was good and dry before I put my ribbon on. And again, this is going to be nice and dry, and then we'll put the silver on it last. You can also start the little berries as well at this point. And what I did for those is, because you definitely don't want to be leaning on your berries because they take a little longer to dry. So you want to make sure that you have everything done that you want. And then the ribbon off to the side here should stay out of trouble. So with these, I definitely just concentrated mostly on the white. And to pop things up a little bit, I did do a little bit of lime green. My paint is all over the studio today. Just a little pea of lime green, just to brighten things up a bit. So you're going to pop your dry brush into your white paint, or test it, unload it, kind of work it into your sponge a little bit. And then you're going to pick up just the smallest little pea of lime, give it a little bit of a turn, twirl. Right, so we can add that little bit of a shadow look on the one side of the berry. So it should stay pretty consistent, usually somewhere down to the bottom on one side. Our highlights kind of looking this way, so sometimes we do try to keep the look that the highlights are coming on the same side. Okay, so we can definitely start, oops, the dark on the bottom. I'm going to pick it up so that I'm picking the dark up at the bottom. And make our little berries. And then I did add a little extra trick in there, guys, because I wanted some of the leaves to hide some of the berries. Right, so we can make it look really like they're swallowed inside. So some of them can look like they're leaning over. Two here, three here. I'm definitely adding the white now, and then popping it up with the silver. After it dries, it'll be a lot brighter. Okay, so you see a little curl where it's like almost like a flower. That's a great spot to put your berries. Okay, so this one comes down a little bit lower. You can add little stems if you want, or just leave it like this and that'll look like they're still going to look like they're coming out. Here, here, here. And then, of course, here, I always like to look at them the way I'm painting them, so that way I can see the look of them. So I'm gonna put one right here, right, half over one of the leaves. Right, so you're trying to put a couple just glazing over another leaf. Okay, so we got one there. Let's touch up. Spot there. Maybe. Put another one up here. Get dot crazy here. Okay, so now that we have all our dots on there, we'll dab her in the water so that it stays clean. And if you want to use your flat brush, guys, it might be a little bit more precise for this, but or a 10. And a smaller brush. And we're going to go over, we're going to pick up that gradient mix again with our citrus and our green. Tip with a little bit of white. Brighten that up a little bit. Add a little silver again. So it'll be the same technique depending on what you feel like you want to do. So where it is half of one, what I'm going to do is just come over that stroke again and cover half of that circle. So I want to hide some of it. So I got to come over and add a little bit more silver on top. I can tip and add a little bit more brightness or white or whatever it needs. Okay, so what I'm trying to do is make it look like it's popping out. So wherever you got half of a stroke, you don't have to do this to all of them, right? You just do it to a few just to make it look like they're really recessed. Okay, so maybe this one's fine. I'm going to cut this one off just a little bit. And look at all of them, see how they do it. Some you can definitely leave like they're out, but I was just trying to give a little bit more of an illusion of some of them being hidden. Another one there. Go over it again. Hide that one. Too much. Maybe I hid that one a little too much. Maybe you want at least half or a little bit bigger than half of your berry showing out. I'm running out of green paint, so I'm trying to find just enough to wake up a couple strokes. Maybe one over here. And use your round brush too if you want, whatever you like. Like I said, sometimes I just grab the edge of it, right? Just to kind of paint through it. See how I just grab the edge there? And that's good for a few. If you feel like you want to let these dry and go over them again, sometimes they are a little bit translucent, then definitely I would go over them twice before I did this little closure little area. But another little trick too, again, if you really want to get into the details, this is supposed to be a really easy project for you guys, but what I want to share with you guys is all these little tricks that make a difference on adding that little bit more of a pop, right? So again, we can add just the odd illusion of a stem coming in from some of them. You're just pulling a very, very light sap line. Maybe a little bit darker here and there. Just a very whimsical kind of pull. Right? Just enough to say that you're giving them a few stems. Just pull that in just with the color on the edge of my brush. And then also, if I want to add a little bit more shading into areas, you know, you can add a little bit more. It's quite dark, but again, just thin it out a little bit just to give the smallest amount of shadow where you need it. Sometimes I'll do it right on the berry. Sometimes I'll do it right behind the berry, like on the berry, but behind the leaf. Just if you think about in real life, you know, you might have those shadows. That berry is behind, right? Maybe you have some leaves here that aren't standing out enough among each other, right? So you can always add just that little bit more shading to separate some of these as well. Right, so put a little bit of shadow where I want. Just add a little bit more dimension. I do want these berries to look a little bit bright. Right, just that little bit of shadow. If you want. Now I want to add just that little bit of silver onto my pot. I'm just gonna pick that up by itself on my flat brush and just kind of float that in. And you'll see it's like a little bit of a wash, little bit of floating medium maybe. Your light areas should still stay dark, light, and your dark areas should stay dark. I'm tongue-tied tonight. And just give it that really quick little wash. Right, and that just picks up that silver. So just in the very middle is fine. I definitely went a little more simpler on the second one than I did on the other one. Went a little bit more crazy with a lot more smaller strokes. Just depends on how you feel. Always pop in a couple more. A little bit different, eh? I made these definitely, I was a lot smaller on my punches. Whatever you want to dot with a little bit of sap. And just the smallest little dot, guys, just. And then wherever you put the dot, definitely it's going to look better in a lighter part of the color. But you can definitely put it over on this side, that side. You know, try to make these berries look like they're different directions. See a little bit of that one. Simple little dots. I'm using an old brush, it's separating on me. Toothpick works too, whatever you have tiny. Even though you don't see the dot on that one, it's covered. Finishes it nicely, and just look like a bunch of dots if we put little tiny dots on there. As I said, I did go in a little crazy. I was playing, having lots of fun. I added more little strokes up in the center here too, and adding some more into the front view. Really curling them right over. Just a couple. And when we're happy, we can do a ribbon. I really pushed this one over to the side too more. Went a little crazy there. That's okay. Every single time you do this, it'll always look a little bit different. I'm going to use like a 10. Maybe a little bit smaller. If we have clean room on our plate, I don't think I do. Just going to grab another old plate here. And pop on a little bit of engine red and some daffodil yellow. Just a little bit. And so if you want it to be more pinky, you can definitely use a red and a white together. Or if you want it to look a little bit more red, then we'll put just that small, a little bit of yellow in there on the tip to help it highlight. And it should be like maybe a little bit more of a corally kind of yellow, a little bit dirty yellow. So you don't need it as bright as the daffodil, but definitely having that transition into the engine red is going to be a little bit more orangey, nice and bright. And so that's the kind of color that you're looking for. And then decide where you want to put your ribbons. And so we can put that little tiny stroke in the center to put our position where we want the middle of our ribbon to be. It's always a good marker spot to put in there. Okay, and with this red and yellow, it's definitely a little challenging sometimes to get good coverage. I often will go over and put 2 coats. Okay, so our back part of that ribbon is going to be pressure and coming over, flipping around a little bit to the side to create that small little top part of the ribbon on the back. Okay, so I would just, if you want, do both sides. If you want really good coverage, sometimes you can let that dry a little bit. Come over doing like 3/4 of the top of that ribbon. Really does help to have a little blow dryer. And then we'll go over it again, you'll get better coverage. Especially with these reds on top of the green. We did the back part of that ribbon first. And you're coming around, you want to do that all in one stroke. Coming around, making a little bit of a bump, and then you're coming out straight so that you're flipping over into your center. You can do it in both directions. You start from the center, move yourself out. Alright, just gotta fight through all that green, right? And you can do like a little bit of a dolphin nose. You girls that took my whole program know what my dolphin nose is. And sometimes just waiting for that to dry and do another coat. For it to look a little bit more flippy this way. Instead of going all the way around, you're just 3/4 of the way through at the bottom, flip over. And then we wanted to have a little bit of a trail. Maybe I don't want to cover my nice berry here. So I'm gonna curl that around my berry. Put pressure up on the chisel, nice and thin, and loop that little ribbon down. And up on the chisel, pressure. Up on the chisel, pressure. Okay, so this one here, coming over to the side, come down up on your chisel. Over to the side, especially when you want it to go around things, right? You gotta kind of stretch it over there a little bit more. Really nice and thin, and then down. Okay, so I ran out of paint. Go over it again. Nice and thin little points at the bottom. Nice and really thin. Pressure up on those chisels. There we go, that's better coverage. A little bit of fat blob there, just rinse it away. Very nice. How you making it with your ribbons, okay? I'll show you again on this paper here. The paper absorbs a lot better sometimes because it sucks up that paint. You're coming over up on your chisel a little bit to move down to make it look like like an M. Coming up on your chisel and then rocking it right over to that point. Everything has to be practiced in both directions. Coming around like a C. A little bit of a wiggle for your M. Straighten out that brush so you can rock it over and flatten it over. Pressing it up to the chisel to bring it to the point again, to the center of your bow. You can make your little centers this way, you know, there's a bunch of different ways you can make them really for your little center knot. Up on your chisel, press, up on your chisel, press, right? So it depends on which way you pop that pressure down too. See, I can go this way. I can push it to the left of me, or I can push it to the right of me. You see where that highlight is following on both sides there? So definitely when you're doing your ribbon on one side, you want that little highlight to look a little bit more on this side. Makes a bit of a difference. Right. And then if you're going down in this direction, right, you can definitely play around and get it to look a little different, right? How slow you move it, a little bit more rocking back. That's a little bit more of an advanced technique too, is doing the rock back. And that's a really tight ribbon. And so you're coming up around your ribbon. You're really rocking back to get that little curl up there. And so you bring that over a little bit more longer, rock it back, Bring it around, put pressure, up on your chisel so you can straighten up to rock over. Push over. I want to do a little bit more advanced. Top of your ribbon there. Okay guys, I just kind of made a mess of that, so hopefully you guys got the gist from the original PDF. And then, of course, at the end, you can make a little bit of an inky wash of a color. To sign your name or your initials. That's it. Same thing up here, guys. If you have any areas that you just want to clean up a little bit more, just grab a little bit of gray and floating medium and just come up underneath any of your background. Mine's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with the way it's looking. The second version always turns out better than the first one. I always find that I learn a lot through the first time. So practice just on some paper and some cardstock at first. Definitely helps. You guys want to show me what you're doing or got any questions? Oh, awesome. Hang in here. Oops. There we go. Oh, awesome job, Anne. Nice. Very nice. You did a big one, eh? Is that
Yeah, I did a 12 by 16.
Is it 12 by 16? Okay, good.
I liked everything till I did the ribbon, and I'm like, I'm getting too tired.
Let me try.
I get up at 5 o'clock for work, so I'm getting a little tired.
Oh, yeah. Well, you can always let it dry and make it a little bit darker there if you want. If it's too late, none, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, just look at it with new eyes in the morning and touch it up.
This was great. Thank you so much. Much easier than I thought it would be.
Oh, good, good. I do try to do slow. I do try to make it slow. That's why some of my courses end up 2 days, because I go a little slower than Donna. But I want you guys to keep up with me too, so that's awesome. How you doing there, Cecilia? Did you get painting? Let me see what you did. Talk.
Trying to find it on my phone. I still got a lot of work to do. You really filled yours out. I really need to go back and put a lot of green inside of there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, you need to add some more. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
what I
make
do.
make them stand out a little bit more.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I go like, oh, I need to redo that. I have to watch you more. And I'll go like, wow, you really got those. I don't know how you did it, that you can see all the different layers of the stems.
Yeah,
You can see your strokes on each one of them. Mine look like they just start blending to each other.
so yeah, they're ending right at the base of your stem. So you're trying to make them up higher so that you're finishing at the top of your stem part. Right? And that way you're filling them in a little bit more. And then you keep that dark there a little bit too more. Okay, and Miss Brenda and Dorothy, how you guys doing?
Look at her ribbon. It's awesome. I love it.
Thank you. I had to do more greenery, so I didn't get any berries done yet. I got my ribbon almost done.
Good, good. Yeah, berries are easy to pop in.
Yeah.
Awesome. And Brenda, how you doing today? Yeah, did you get to paint? Yeah, awesome. Yeah. Well, you guys can always send them to me private message too. I'd love to see them a little closer. And then, of course, share them on the group, guys. You guys are doing awesome. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is the last class of 2021. The holidays are coming up. Everybody's really busy, starting to make gifts now. And I've got a bunch of commissions to finish up. So I won't be having any more classes now, probably until the new year. Gonna take a couple weeks off. Yeah, I'm gonna take a couple of weeks off and enjoy my family being in town now and the new studio and doing some creating and coming up with some new ideas for 2022. Yeah, awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me, guys. I'm so happy to see you guys again. And you hope you like
Have a
this
good holiday.
nice quick project tonight.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to you
Everybody
too.
too, Dorothy.
Happy New Year's.
Bye-bye.
Bye.